should be showing Vladimir Putin. Come and see.
Yeah. We normally start with a sillier joke, but I don't feel like this. We should do that for this one.
Yeah, if you came here for jokes, I've got some really bad news for you.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
My name is Justin.
I'm Pierce. If you've
Weird.
not heard of this movie before, come and see. It's a Soviet era Russian language film about kind of Russian experience, well, Belarusian experience during World War II.
Yeah. It was directed by Ilym Klimov. And forgive us if we're pronouncing these names wrong. I feel like it'll be kind of a common occurrence. We're not Russian. And Alexei Kravchenko, who stars in this film. Both these people, it was kind of their mic drop film. Like, they were one-hit wonders because Ilym Klimov just basically directed this film and vanished off to the face of the earth because he said all he needed to say with this one film. And I think this was also stemming from his childhood experiences during the war, I think. I don't know if you've looked into that.
Okay, I haven't looked into that. It came out in the 80s, so he would yeah, I mean, I guess he would be like 40 or 50 at that point if he was a kid during the war.
Yeah.
He was born in the 30s, so yeah, it might be.
Yeah. And basically Come and See is do you also know where the title comes from as well?
Yes, it comes from a Bible verse, right? I read somewhere that they were going to originally call the film like Kill Hitler
Yeah.
or something, but it was, I mean, that I kind of am glad they moved away from that. It's a little on the nose. I understand why, because of a specific scene in the movie, but yeah, I'm glad they moved away from that and moved towards this one, which is kind of like it works on the level of just, if you just look at it without even knowing it comes from the Bible verse, it works on the level of like, come and see this grand, awful thing that happened.
Exactly. And it sounds like a pulp novel or a pulp movie, just like saying kill Hitler. Which
Right.
they probably don't if the movie they don't kill Hitler in this movie. just telling you that.
Yes. Yeah. The specific scene, which I'm sure we will talk about, is not one in which Hitler is killed, but I understand there is a correlation.
Yeah. The title comes from the Book of Revelation, where I'm just going to read off the quote. And when he had opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth beast say, "Come and see." And looked, and behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him. So, yeah, not the happiest quote, but it is very foreboding and ominous, and really describes the hell that would be following in this film. Because, good lord, is this film just probably it has been said many times that you really can't make an anti-war film because even displaying the fact that war is being done, it just kind of mitigates the fact that you can't look at war heroically and glamorously. But like this one kind of takes that statement, throws that out the window.
Yeah, and you usually have a protagonist, and they usually do something great or heroic. Typically, in a lot of like war, there are a lot of war films that profess themselves to be anti-war, and they show their protagonist, who they want you to root for, doing something heroic, and it ends up kind of muddling the message a little bit. Not so much the case here. There is an extensive focus on trying to keep the anti-war message from being muddled. And yeah, also speaking of the hell that would follow the beginning of the film, the main actor, the Alexei Kravchenko, he went through hell from what I've heard and read, just doing this role. I mean, they were literally shot at. He was on a starvation diet for the second half of the film. I'm sure you know some more some
Yeah.
more stuff than even I do.
Yeah, he was shot at with live ammunition. I think he kind of
Right.
forgot that part.
Right. Well, I don't know. Shot at kind of implies
Yeah.
that because you aren't
Shot at with Nerf
typically
bullets.
really shot at in a movie, but yes.
Yeah. And this is probably, I think, probably the best acting I've seen from a child, or probably up there. Because there's not much dialogue that comes from him. A lot of it is from a lot of the close-ups from his face, and the fact that you can just see periodically the film will have a close-up on his face, and you get to see the fact that he is deteriorating. He starts off just like very happy and jovial, and he kind of ends off the movie almost looking frail and like an old man, and you can see it in his eyes and his facial expression that he is not having a good time. He's been traumatized. He's been to hell. I don't even know if he's gone to hell and back. It is just just a brilliant performance from him, and I don't think he's acted in anything major since then. He started when he was at 14, and then basically just kind of didn't do anything after that. I don't even know if he did
He
theater after that.
he it just looking at online, it looks like he took a break from acting for 15 years and then he wasn't in anything I've ever heard of after that.
Yeah, like made for TV films or something.
Yeah, lots of TV series and miniseries. But yeah, he after finishing this film, he didn't acting it. This came out in 1985. Nothing. He wasn't in anything until 2000.
Yeah, probably adds to the authenticity of the film, because like these are all, because like Elam Klimov, he prided himself on saying that he wanted this to be as authentic as possible. So got a bunch of no-name actors, and especially Alexei Kravchenko. He was just a child. He was not a professional actor, and you never see him in anything major again. So he's not that iconic. And you only know him in this role, which I think all the actors here are great as well. But I think this film really specializes in is the fact that it kind of makes it into a horror film, and it's surreal but also very authentic, and it just makes you feel very uncomfortable, like you're in a nightmare, which probably wasn't too far off from the truth. Um, it is just it is very uncomfortable to watch. It is scary. I'll say that. The first time I watched this, I was a little bit disturbed, to say the least. We haven't gotten to the summary yet. Do you want to go over the summary? I know we kind of described, we're kind of all over the place, but
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna mention this because I think it's important. The movie opens with two boys digging in a trench looking for weapons because they want to join the partisan Soviet forces and join the war in the mid 1940s. And the next day, two partisans arrive at our main character Flora's house, and they are conscripting him. He is still a teenager, but they are conscripting him because they need the people, and he is brought on to do kind of menial tasks at this base in the woods. While he's there, he meets a girl, Glasha, who is she seems kind of crazy. I won't lie, but basically the men from the camp go out to some kind of it's some kind of military operation. I don't know how many details we get. And he is told to stay behind because one of the older men don't
Have
his
boots.
shoes, his boots are falling apart, and so they switch, and he's made to stay behind. And Glasha tells him it's because the leaders feel bad for him because he's so young, and he's too young to fight in this war.
I also think it's important to mention the fact, sorry to override you, that basically when he's at the camp, um, one, they also just make him do like menial task work, nothing
Right.
very glamorous. And two, they also make him like stand out watch, and he says to shoot anyone with a password who does not recite the password. And Glasha comes and basically just doesn't. Basically, I don't. That's the way the film is just saying it's not really in him to be a killer, but he is there anyways. So
Right. Okay. Yep. But shortly after the men leave, he finds Glasha crying in the woods, and they have this conversation where she seems crazy. She's kind of hysterical. She talks about wanting children, I believe, at that point. Like that's her big.
I think a lot of things.
She talks about a lot of things, but one of the major things I feel like was at that point was that she mentioned like she wanted to be a mother and all that. I mentioned that specifically because it's big
And repeats
thematically.
later on. Yeah.
And then there is a bombing raid,
Mhm.
and they hide to avoid Germans. I believe paratroopers jump down to, and somewhere in there's a weird scene where they're like dancing around.
Yeah, the childlike
This,
innocence.
yes, yeah. It confused me at first, but yeah, it's their last moment of innocence before the rest of the film starts. And so they go back to Flora's village. They try eating something, but it's weird because everyone's gone. Nobody's here. So they try and wade through a bog, where Flora says, I'm pretty sure he thinks his siblings hide out on this island that's through the bog, and so he starts heading that way. We see lots of victims of war on their way out. Glasha looks back, and there's just piles of bodies.
Yeah, the shot lasts for like a second or two, and then
Right.
it goes back.
Yep. But they make their way through the bog. It's tough, and they are hysterical. And Glasha's like, "There's nobody out here. You're crazy." Somebody does find them when they get back to land, and she's telling this guy that Flora is crazy. She kind of turns against Flora for a second because they're like, it's just a crazy situation. They're distressed and both hysterical, and but this is, I believe these are villagers from Flora's village, right? Or
Yeah, and I believe the elder was the mayor of the village as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was the same guy, the guy from the beginning of the film was there, right? Yeah.
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 Actually, specifically, well, okay. Basically, at the end of this little, after the what is it? So basically, Glasha, I'll take over. After Glasha starts screaming at Flora, for basically just denying that the village is that everyone in the village and his family's dead. Glasha just basically tries to drown her, I believe, or something like that. Just and then someone takes notice, and to recovers Glasha from being drowned, and basically they both yell at Flora, saying that he's gone crazy, and that he's gone deaf. I don't know how true it is that he's deaf, but basically he's just like losing it. So then they take him to this. I think this is where the rest of the villagers are. I don't know where this place is.
It seems
But
like it's just an island on the bog.
maybe this is
Like
what he's talking about.
Yeah, I thought so, but
Yeah.
it's not super clear from what I remember.
Okay.
But
So
you're talking about the elder, right? Badly burnt.
Yeah. The badly burnt
Okay.
elder. He survived, but barely so. He's barely alive. Basically, he's almost unrecognizable. He's the same elder from the beginning. and I'm assuming this is still the mayor. He's basically, and then he yells. I don't know if this is a dream sequence or not, but he yells at Flora that you should not have gotten the gun. You should not have dug up the rifles. And then that sends Flora into just mass hysteria. He feels intense guilt. He backs off, and he tries to, I guess, attempt suicide by digging his head into the ground like an ostrich and trying to deny everything. But Glasha and the villagers like pull him out just to save him. So after this, Flora just recovers at a nearby warehouse. They try to recover at a nearby warehouse.
Well, yeah, there's some men sent out to get
Yeah.
supplies, basically, like
Yeah.
food, whatever they can find.
But unfortunately, this is also like a minefield. I think like 2 or 3 people die or something like that.
Yeah, he's sent out with 3 other men, and by the end of
There's
this
only one
expedition,
other.
he's the only one left.
Yeah.
I think 2 die in the minefield, and then the
Mm-hmm.
third dies later in like the open
Yeah.
field with the cow.
Yeah. Well, they try to steal a cow from a villager, and then
Yes.
after they're successful in this, then they steal the cow, and then they are shot up by a German machine gun or something like that. Basically, this is where the live rounds come from because it feels very real because it is very real. They actually shot at him, and shot
Yeah.
both.
I remember reading somewhere, I don't know if this is true or if I'm misremembering, that they actually shot at a cow for this movie.
We can't confirm the fact that all these animals that some of these animals have died. I'm pretty sure this shouldn't be a controversial opinion, but maybe killing animals for the sake of art probably not the best thing to do. No matter how good the movie is, probably don't do that. It's not a good thing to do. Just saying. So after that, basically, Flora attempts to steal a horse and a cart from this villager, but the owner catches him. But then Flora begins to aim his gun at him. But then they start noticing that there's an entire SS troop coming by and attempting to just like raid the village or something like that. So then, in act of mercy, the owner tells them to like just come with him. Just you'll be safer in the village. And this is where everything just starts to get from bad to worse because after Flora's taken to the village, they discuss the fake identity for him. He's the nephew. He's like the son. Basically, they're trying to cover all these holes and this identity. Some of it holds water, some of it doesn't. And then, basically, the Germans come, and Flora tries to warn the townsfolk like there's no way of getting out of this. You're all going to be hurted to your death. But he is no matter how nice they try to treat the German soldiers, another German soldier comes by and says that there are partisans here, and that is just condemning everyone to death. And they are forcing everyone to go into a barn church. And while this is all happening, they're basically just giving them not even an ultimatum. They're just giving them false information, saying that we're liberating you. We are just make sure that you bring all the essentials. But like, I'm pretty sure this was actually this is again based very much on truth. The fact that basically this was just all a ruse just to make them feel calm before they all get locked in the barn. And then, and probably the most horrific sequence, they start burning down the barn with everyone in it.
Important note about that. Before they burn down the barn with everyone in it, one of the soldiers gets up in the window and they open it and they say, "If you leave your children, you can come out. If you come out without a child, you can get out of here." And we actually see them. A woman tries to escape, and then they throw out her baby, and they literally like throw the baby back in.
Yeah, very horrific.
Right.
Yeah, and Flora is allowed to escape the church, and then they actually do burn down the church. It is very just disturbing. We hear the screaming, and then it just slowly starts to stop, and they're shooting it. And I think they're also playing music while it's happening and just enjoying themselves. I think one lady even eats a like one German Nazi lady. She starts eating lobster or crab or something like that. Basically, it's very all nonchalant. People are just reveling in it. And again, and probably one of the most iconic images from this film, they see Flora, they see how traumatized he is, and they laugh and they take a photo with him. And then they also, unfortunately, also take the woman that escaped. They drag her by the hair, and we don't see her for a while, but we kind of know what's happening if she's about to be
She's
screaming.
yeah, she gets dragged by the hair into a truck.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. But as Flora wanders out of the village into the direction of Germans, he sees the fact that there's a lot of carnage happening, the fact that there's a German woman that got shot. I think an entire truck that got destroyed, and he sees a bunch of corpses and sees that it has been ambushed by partisans or a rebellion group or something. So he recovers his jacket and rifle, and he just basically just returns to the village and finds that they actually the partisan rebellion has actually succeeded, and they captured like a group of Germans that they are responsible for the barn burning. And the main collaborator starts pleading for their lives and says like, "It wasn't me. We're just doing this. I'm very sorry." But then there was one person that just speaks pure German and he's very unapologetic, and it says that yes, we did say leave your children here because the problems start with the children, and he starts spouting this very Nazi-esque rhetoric about just how children are the root of all evil and all that stuff. Basically, I don't read all that stuff, but basically, if you could think of it being really bad, he says it. And while this is all happening, they're pleading for their lives, and they start throwing cans of gasoline on them or something like that, just to basically light them on fire as revenge. But and Flora does point out that the fact that that these were the people responsible, but one person just offs to shoot them instead, so they are spared kind of a cruel death. And as the partisans leave, Flora notices a framed portrait of Adolf Hitler, and with the rifle that he has not shot at all. This is the only time that I believe that he shoots the rifle in the entire movie. He aims at it, he shoots at it, and he does a montage of clips that reverse time all the way to Hitler being a baby and doesn't shoot. And then he continues to be with the partisans to join the resistance.
Yep.
The end.
And that is where the title of Kill Hitler, I think, probably makes the most sense, but it also doesn't really. So I'm glad they didn't go with it.
Yeah. So I think I know we're gonna be kind of all over the place. But one, I do want to say that again, this is very true. The Derlewanger Brigade, in during the Nazis regime and all that stuff, this actually did happen and happened 628 times in the in Belarusian villages alone, in the same manner, because Derlewanger and his entire brigade were notorious, actually infamous, for being so cruel to the Nazis. I don't know if this is going to be a PR thing because they didn't want to show them being extra cruel to the Jewish population or whatever, or being so cruel that that even the Nazis were disgusted. But he very much employed this method of doing this to really save ammunition and just taking sadistic joy in the fact that he's causing all these people to suffer. So the fact that this happened 628 more times is it's horrific.
Yeah.
If there's anything to praise this movie, is the fact that it is just so steeped in truth. The fact that people can be this brutal and does not shy away from it. It's not heroic at all. It's haunting.
It's a great film in general for Western audience. It's obviously a great film in general, but I mean for Western audiences in particular, because I mean the Eastern Front was horrific. This is just one instance or one series of instances of horrifying things happening on the Eastern Front. There's a reason why the Russians felt like they needed to take such horrific revenge on the Germans when they started pushing back into Germany. But at the same time, also the stories you hear of what the Russians were doing as they were pushing into Germany is also horrific. I keep saying that over and over again, but there is no other word to describe it. And obviously this movie's scope is not even just focused on the Soviets. It's primarily focused on one specific region in the Soviet Union during the war. But even just, hopefully, I would hope this has shown some people how horrific that part of it was, and then they looked into it more and saw just how much went on the Eastern Front.
Yeah.
Awful.
Very, very, just really bad.
Yeah.
But I again, we're gonna be bouncing back and forth, but the ending, basically, I didn't think this movie was horrific, like with a capital H, up until the second half, because
Yeah.
That once you get to that village part with the barn burning, that's when it gets really bad. But I do think that the ending, even before the montage part, I think the main theme of this film, I think you might have this different interpretation, is about maintaining your humanity in a way, in the face of just like tragedy or even just atrocity. So
I actually completely agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I would say that's the main theme. Even the smaller themes, which I'm gonna let you finish. I'll get to those later. Yeah. I think a lot of them kind of add up to that larger theme.
Yes. One, I think the backwards montage. I've seen some discussion. So basically, at the end, Flora is shooting this portrait of Hitler. He believes that it's not Hitler. He is the face of World War II, of the bad side of World War II. And I've seen some people say that just like killing Hitler won't stop evil, which that's up for debate. But I think him shooting the portrait of Hitler many times over and over again, and reversing, basically, I think is one supposed to feed into the fantasy of the fact that it would stop everything from happening. But Floor stopping at the end once he sees the portrait of Hitler, and his mother, which actually this photo was actually doctored. It is the picture of his mother and the picture of his the baby Hitler, but like on her lap. They merged this photo together, so it's not an entirely true photograph. They wanted to basically make sure that you see that even Hitler was a child too. I think that's just showing the way that Flora, he even won't stoop as low to kill a child, even though that they have also killed children. And two, I think the other part is the fact that after dousing the people with gasoline, people just opted to shoot the Nazis instead, even though again they're pure evil. They didn't want to do revenge; they just wanted a quick, merciful execution because I don't think they wanted to do just this revenge sort of thing where they could also just be out brutalized. Because I don't know if I have the power to say this, but revenge doesn't solve anything. I know it's very tempting for me to be like, "Oh yeah, I would totally not shoot those, burn those Nazis." But I think they opted for the more humane treatment, which um, maybe is something that speaks for the film. I don't know, but I think that's also adding to the theme of just like maintaining your humanity.
Well, and I think it also kind of speaks to the feeling of wanting revenge for the Russians in general after they started pushing back in the war, that they did at least make them think that they were going to all burn to death. Like the fire did start, and it was just somebody put them out of their misery. it kind of shows that there wasn't necessarily agreement between the these Russian victims of Germany, how they should treat any Germans that they came across.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I guess there's a little bits pieces of humanity over there, but like again, I think this is just saying that revenge only makes you a worse person and kind of brings you down to their level. Um, I think that's what that film's trying to say. It is a very
Mhm.
bold statement, especially showing genuine archival footage. That's when the film kind of veers into art house territory for me. It is just a very again the entire film does veer on surreal and practical or authentic most of the time. I think this is kind of veers a little bit too much in for to me, but I think it is still just a very bold ending to show, especially after the previous however long this movie is, 2 hours and 20 minutes, something like that.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right. Um, I do also want to say I mentioned kind of the smaller themes, as in not
Mm.
the main one. And I also mentioned earlier that I specifically wanted to mention Flora's talking about, or not Flora, Glacia's talking about how she wanting to be a mother
Mhm.
in when she was giving that whole speech in the woods. Um, I think that that's important, and uh, it also adds up to this major theme of like keeping your humanity,
Mhm.
because towards the end, uh, we see or Flora sees that woman who was dragged off by the soldiers
Mm.
following the burning of the barn, and she has blood covering her face and running down her legs. And I mean, to me, that blood running down the legs kind of instantly brings to mind like
Mm.
it instantly kind of pushes you towards thinking about um, something going wrong with uh, childbirth or her reproduction in general. Um, that was kind of what it was instantly like for me, and I also, I don't know, I didn't get quite a good look at her, but she reminded me of
Yeah.
Glacia a bit. Um,
Many
and
people.
so it
Yeah.
felt like the connection there was very purposeful, and so I think that basically the what was trying to be said was that this the citizens have these desires of who they want to be before the war comes in, and once the war comes in and they have all these traumatic experiences and they're mistreated and maybe something horrific like this barn burning happens to them, they kind of lose themselves and who they want to be. And he shows this through the motherhood. Um, and then there's obviously also another level to that, which is like after seeing all of this, would even the person who desires to be a parent want to bring a child into this after
Mm.
seeing all of it? So there's multiple levels to it, but I think it again does all lend itself to whether or not you can maintain yourself and your humanity through
Yeah. Um,
this.
yeah. Um, yeah, it is. You kind of expect them not to because, like, you see Flora at least progressively become more into like a fugue state,
Yeah.
basically, especially by the end. But the film does, I guess, in a way, show a very small victory for him. The fact that like he does come out on top. Um, so
And it's a very yeah, and it's also a very clear distinction between him and the Germans. The Germans who were willing to only let adults come out, and we're going to kill all the children, and even the adults that did come out, they abused.
Mhm.
And then versus him, the only time he shot his gun, he fired it at the person who is not completely responsible for exactly what happened to him, but responsible for the series of events that led to what has happened to him and his people and his country. That's the only time he's fired his gun the whole movie, and he couldn't even do it when thinking about that person as a baby, because it's a baby.
Yeah, and I don't know. Again, this is very hypothetical, but perhaps Adolf Hitler could have been a better, more humane person if he was raised in a better household. Didn't have the experiences that he had. I don't know. Babies are blank
Yeah,
slate. I guess.
yeah. I don't. Okay, yeah, yes, true. If he was born into a different situation, Adolf Hitler would not be the same person. But after, I don't know, I took a class on German
Oh,
nationalism and the history of it.
someone else from taking his place is what
I don't know that necessarily someone else would have taken his place. But following World War One, these revanchism was boiling in
Oh,
Germany, and there he pulled from. I would say he corrupted a lot of the things he pulled from, but he did pull from a lot of cultural and intellectual touchstones that were present in Germany already. That's how he was able to do it. Was that he was able to pull from some of them, and some of them were corrupted, and some of them were just already vile in the way that they were taught. You know, it was the early 1900s, and so yeah, we can. He was definitely a such a unique case in history. I don't know if I would be able to say, oh, if Hitler didn't exist, somebody would have replaced him for
yeah.
sure, 1-to-1. But those things were present. He didn't just like completely shift it that much.
Hmm.
He kind of took advantage of an existing situation, and history could have gone a different way if he didn't exist. That's true. I don't. That's the thing. I don't know, but
Yeah. We can always speculate.
right. But the point is the baseline was there. But yes, uh, the point the movie is making and the point that you're making still remains that it is a baby, and that baby born in any other situation would probably be a completely different person, or at least mostly different. But I wouldn't I wouldn't feel right also leaving that with like, oh, and then, you know, maybe a lot of this wouldn't have happened, because we truly have no idea, because a lot of the situation is outside of just the one person.
So we should have shot that baby.
No.
No.
But yeah.
Okay, that was the only bit of humor in a while. So okay. Um, let's talk about the filmmaking. Just to shift gears a bit, because I think we've covered our tracks here about what this film was trying to say. How basically progressed from naivety to just abject horror. Um, but what I do like about this film is the fact that it is just very surreal, but also real at the same time. It is just the way that the sound design, the sound is just very interesting. The way that it is very subjective, the way that you actually hear things that you're not supposed to hear, the way that you can hear the minute details like flies almost signifying death, like as an omen. You hear a voiceover that you would not be able to hear anyways, and a lot of ambience that just kind of makes you just gets under your skin. It does definitely just like have a disorienting effect, but it is very um it works because again, I think when I first described this movie to other people, I was basically just telling everyone that they finally made war into a horror film, and a lot of horror just basically makes it into this subjective thing instead of just rather objective. And there
Mhm.
are times where it is just very real, but it is mostly just from his perspective. I don't think it ever leaves his perspective at all, aside from a few very small moments. Um, to
Yeah.
that, yeah, and I think it's very effective. Um, Also, what do you think about the sip? I'm assuming this is kind of like an arc symbol. But as soon as I noted this down, I couldn't find anyone discussing it, so this could be all just me. Um, Once Flora just starts walking out of the camp, he steps on an egg, and I don't know if this egg was real or not, but basically you see the guts of the animal of the bird that would have been in that. Um, and basically periodically you'll see a bird just like follow him. You never see the bird fly, so I don't know if that's way of saying anything. I don't know if you were keeping note of that or even noticed it at all, but I remember
Yeah,
reading
I
it.
didn't I didn't see that, but that is interesting. It kind of points to like
Yeah,
ruin and uh I mean
loss of innocence, I guess.
loss of
Uh,
innocence, right?
yeah.
Um
Um, yeah, and interestingly, you never see this bird fly. In fact, the only thing you see, and maybe you can comment on this, is the fact that there is an airplane or drone in the sky that reappears almost 3 times. One before the bomb happens at Glasha, um, probably some other times. I didn't write down the specific times, but I took note of that, because it is almost like a bad omen, and I always thought the contrast between you only see a bird on the ground and an airplane is the only thing you see fly in the entire movie. For me, I like to think that means that, mankind is basically just overtaking nature. War is
mhm.
unnatural. Um, Basically, it's always just watching over, and it even sounds unnatural at times. It almost sounds like a spaceship in a way. I don't think they use authentic sounds. It's just very eerie, just almost out of this world, which I think again adds to the fact that this is just very disorienting.
Yeah. Um One thing as far as production that I noticed during the movie was in the music that I thought was really interesting.
Mm.
Obviously, there are Soviet and Russian songs occasionally. There
Mhm.
was like a Soviet march, but and I don't know that much about classical music. I probably couldn't name most of the instances, but I did hear uh, music that I recognized as classical German and Austrian a few times. Um, in fact, um, at the very end, during the end montage, the only reason I know this is because, like I said, I took a class on German nationalism, and we talked specifically about Wagner for a reason I'll say in a minute. But I know that the song at the end is one from Richard Wagner. Um, During the montage. Uh, and
Was
I
it
know
Rise
the
of
song.
Valkyries? No.
Yeah, the Ride of the Valkyries. I know the song. I'm just saying I wouldn't know most of the other composers, but I know this one.
Mhm.
Um, because and I thought it was interesting because Richard Wagner himself is a horrible anti-Semite.
Oh yeah, yeah.
He was very um, influential in the uh, larger spread of anti-Semitism coming out of like coming towards the end of the 1800s. Um, like he was a huge figure, and he was jealous of other composers, Jewish people. I think Mendelssohn he was jealous of.
Oh,
That might be a rumor, but that's something I read. Um, and he was a horrific anti-Semite, and so to use his song in this montage, kind of showing
That is interesting. Yeah.
Hitler's life in reverse, I thought was an interesting choice, and I wondered if that part of it was intentional, the anti-Semitism.
Yeah, this film doesn't touch on, well, at the end maybe. I don't think it used
Right, that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying, because the focus of the movie isn't anti-Semitism, but this part that focuses more than any other part of the movie on the man who is he's the German leader, that in that instance, the usage of Richard Wagner's music, I think, is interesting, intentional or unintentional, as far as the anti-Semitism goes. I think it's still an interesting choice.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a very interesting choice. I don't really have an answer to that because I don't know. I don't think he's ever commented on that either. The director or really any film critic. Last thing I would like to note: the cinematography, the mise en scène. Unless you have something else to say about the music, but
No,
basically, okay.
yeah. Go ahead.
So, yeah, all this film uses a lot of long takes, and basically a lot of steady cam shots, a lot of close-ups, like I've said before, just to periodically kind of check in with our protagonist and see just like how much he's losing himself. It almost feels like kind of like an illegal film because just how real it is and just like how I don't think it uses any artificial lighting at all, because it's very naturalistic, very widescreen. It doesn't look low budget because like there's a lot of things, um, like they bought authentic props and everything, so it does feel very real. Um, so I think the long takes especially, I kind of you expect it to like cut away and make sure that it doesn't look at anything just unseemly, but it does hold some it holds on them for an extended period of time, just like the very uncomfortable things. Um, and it really allows just like for the tension to build because it's not cutting away. So I thought that was just very interesting. Um, Again, it just shows that it's very realistic. I don't know if it's color grade or not either, but it is just very drowned out in color as well. Um, it The cinematography is just worth mentioning. I don't have too much about to say about it, but like it does really capture the fact that you're very claustrophobic, and it really captures these performances very well. So and the chaos that ensues at the end.
Mm.
So that is also something just I thought that was worth mentioning. So yeah, I think that's all the notes I really have on this film. Unless you got something else to say about it.
No, I think we covered it pretty well. I say pretty well because I feel like you could probably talk about this movie endlessly had you the knowledge and the time to research it.
Yeah.
Um,
I think this is definitely in the conversation of the best war film ever or anti-war film ever. I can't really think of anything else that comes close. I think maybe the film, this French film, The Battle of Algiers, maybe.
Yeah.
But I can't think of anything that's like that was made in America that could really say that this is the definitive anti-war film. So it and this definitely I know that Spielberg when he was making Schindler's List and Saving Private Ryan, he would make sure that it was screened to the actors or the crew beforehand. So there is a lot of inspiration that has shown up in even our Western media. I don't know if you've seen Inglourious Bastards, but there's a part at the end where they actually,
Yep.
well, spoilers for Inglourious Bastards, where they actually do kill Hitler, and they keep on showing the POV of Hitler being shot at with the guy in a similar way of the ending of this movie. So there's that. Um, it's just I don't know, showing the atrocities as like in a barbaric circus. It's just it got to me. This film is very scary. I know I'm kind of rambling at the end, but yeah, if you haven't watched it or listening to this podcast because you're too scared to watch this movie, I don't blame you, but I think this film should be seen by a lot of people that still glorify war,
Yeah.
and especially with what's happening right now.
Yeah. War. We're
It's not good.
we're still waging it for some reason. Seems like I don't know. I don't want to get up on a soapbox or anything, but it seems like the last 100 years has been kind of just like we've realized over and over and over again that war is bad. And here we are.
Yeah. I think that will wrap it up. So, I mean,
Yep.
yeah.
You can find us if you liked this episode, if you had a fun time listening to us talk about Come and See, please give us a like, a rating, subscribe, follow us. We
We're on
really
all social
appreciate
media
it.
platforms.
Yeah. We're not quite on all. I don't think we're on Instagram. But you can find us on Twitter or X, and TikTok and YouTube at not just any pod, not just any book club on YouTube, right?
Thing. We should do that.
Yeah, we should. Yep, not just any book club on YouTube. And yeah, you can find us on whatever podcasting platform. Yeah.
Join us next week when we talk about another Russian classic and probably the most in-depth review that we're ever going to be doing. Probably the last time we're going to be doing such a book this large, The Brothers Karamazov.
Yeah. We'll see exactly how in depth it is. Not to spoil anything, but both of us kind of had a tough time.
It was a bit of a struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in the meantime, goodbye, Prometheus.